Alright guys, welcome to Formula 1 news. Vasseur responded to Lewis Hamilton submitting documents to Ferrari to tell them what they need to change if they want to make their team a championship-winning force yet again. Vasseur says that in many respects Hamilton was not so well equipped to come to Ferrari as some other drivers may well have been, but will he listen to Hamilton's suggestions on how to turn around the Scuderia? What does Charles Leclerc have to say on the matter as well? Very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Lots still happening in the driver market right now. Just to quickly keep in mind, this is the date of the next race right at the end of the month, so we're not far away from F1 getting back underway. Perez will likely be a Cadillac driver. We're expecting the announcement in the Monza Grand Prix. The other driver we think is going to be Drugovich, maybe Bottas, and Mick Schumacher is expected to be the reserve driver. That's what we think at Cadillac, but it could change because over the last couple of days, there's been quite a lot of talk about Alex Dunne, McLaren reserve. He did that great couple of laps around Austria, right, when he stepped into that car earlier this season. Done some great things in Formula 2 so far this year as well. Can be a bit, let's say, well, maybe crash happy is a bit harsh, but certainly he is a rookie in the rawest sense of the word. He's very quick, but he definitely has his moments in him to make some mistakes or be maybe overly aggressive or whatever. Let's just say he's entertaining to watch. Now, there's a couple of teams as a result of this that he has entered the radar of. And this is the thing if you're a rookie, right? If you're like a relatively boring rookie, not there's anything wrong with that, but let's say like Théo Pourchaire, for example, he did end up winning Formula 2, but he wasn't exactly spectacular. Like, he won it, but he won it in a manner that didn't turn too many heads. He didn't also win it at the first time of asking, so there's always other factors in play. Like Bortoleto won F3, won F2, and now, of course, got the F1 seat, but he didn't win F2 in spectacular fashion. Helmut Marko said that Bortoleto just kind of did enough, but because he won F3, won F2 back-to-back, of course, he's going to be in the conversation, whereas a guy like Pourchaire didn't happen. But it's interesting, maybe it's unfair, the bias that the F1 teams have in this regard. But if you're exciting, if you turn heads, you're just more likely to get the drive. It is what it is. And Alex Dunne has certainly turned some heads. So the rumour has it that Red Bull even could be interested. We know that they try and take drivers through their own programme, but sometimes they can't find enough good drivers through their program. Yeah, they've got Arvid Lindblad coming up the ranks. I don't expect them to go and nab Alex Dunne, but if they really need a driver and Verstappen leaves next year, it's an option for them to keep in mind. Alpine is always an option because you never know what Flavio Briatore is going to do next. I wouldn't completely rule out him just changing his mind and sacking Pierre Gasly. It would be incredibly stupid, but it's not entirely impossible. But Alpine we think are going to replace Colapinto maybe with a Bottas or something. There have been rumours about that next year, but could they think about Alex Dunne? Not an impossibility. And even apparently Cadillac are also interested and have all had some preliminary conversations. Not to say that this is going to happen by any means, but just to say that the teams are at least thinking about whether a guy like Alex Dunne, straight off a good Formula 2 campaign, straight into F1, could be a good idea. He was also asked, when's the next F1 spin? And he says, it's soon, but I can't say when. He says, I'm definitely getting another one, maybe two. So maybe another one with McLaren instead of Piastri this time, and then we'll see what happens after that. Of course, Irish driver Alex Dunne, which is causing some just excitement from the Irish fans in general to see some, representation, let's say, back on the grid. Could it be McLaren? Could it be Cadillac? Dunne says, I don't care as long as I'm in F1. Of course, it's not going to be McLaren, respectfully, right? Unless this kid's actually the truth. Now, Isaac Hadjar is also talking about his recent run of form. Lawson's done better with respect to Hadjar over the last few rounds, and Hadjar feels like he's made a few mistakes here and there that have prevented him from maximising his point scoring, and he says that if Red Bull are going to take me seriously as Max's teammate, I need to cut out some of those errors. So there's a few things lately that have conspired for Yuki to be in a slightly stronger position, and then certainly for Lawson to be in a stronger position. Not to say Red Bull will keep those drivers. We know that Red Bull can change their mind on a whim. There's also talk about the rotational calendar. There should be calendar, not ER, whatever. It is what it is. But we know, for example, that Istanbul Park wants to return. We know that Portimao wants to return. We know that Spa is moving to a rotational spot on the calendar in a couple of years' time. So the theory goes maybe that if Domenicali is going to say, well, we can only really do 24, 25 Grand Prix a season at a max, then we might bring back the Hockenheim ring or whatever, right? We might bring these tracks back, but only as a rotational circuit. circuit because we really need that Bangkok street race to be on the calendar every year, and certainly Madrid can't go anywhere either. So that's the debate we might be having. I mean, what would you guys prefer? Let's say we are in a world where 10 of the Grand Prix per season are just these corporate street tracks that pay way too much money. What do we do with the other Grand Prix? You know, what Grand Prix should stay every year? Like, Silverstone should be on the calendar every year. Interlagos should be on the calendar every year. There's many Grand Prix that I would put in that category. Even Spa, despite its problems, like I still think for sure, should be Suzuka, maybe you could argue, but even Suzuka, could you say, well, how good's it really been? Could it need, could that be even in a rotational spot? Monza should be on the calendar every year. So, I don't know, like, are we going to be in a world where that's a possibility in the near future, that many of the classics, we go to these other circuits, but it's on a rotational basis? I don't know if F1 fans would really like that. For example, Melbourne shouldn't be going anywhere from the calendar either, and I'm sure it's not going to be. They've got a contract there for ages, and it's starting out the season. They also confirmed today that Oscar Piastri is going to have a grandstand. Makes perfect sense. He's now becoming an incredibly successful Australian driver. He might win the championship going into next season. Lando had a grandstand back at Silverstone. Piastri is going to have a grandstand at the Australian Grand Prix. It's pretty funny, right? He puts out this video. I like when these drivers do these videos. They're not exactly content creators, are they? So half of his camera isn't even on the screen. Like, he's just looking at the ceiling or the wall or whatever. And people, what do they call it? Like the boomer pause or something? I forget what the kids these days call it. But basically, when the video starts and you're like looking at the camera before you start talking, there's like a word for that. I forget what it is. Anyway, Oscar basically just speaks deadpan in the way that he does to the camera and says that he's got a grandstand next year. So, pretty cool moment, really. You rarely see drivers tweet that much, especially not doing like little video messages to the camera like this. So I thought that was kind of nice. Of course, there has been some debate as to, is it overpriced, right? So here we go again, the Piastri grandstand, it's ready for sale, and on the 3rd of September, whatever, you'll be able to pre-sale it, and these are the kind of numbers that you're looking at. People are saying the prices are insane or whatever, and like, I don't really know what those prices look like compared to what you'd expect it to be. Are you going to pay a premium to sit in the Piastri stands? Probably. Was it the same for the Lando stand at Silverstone? Maybe there's something in that as well. Zach Brown wants a Zach stand. And, well, that's the implication, right? He says, it's given me a thought about the USA race. Silverstone's got the Lando stands. Piastri's got the, Australia's got the Piastri stands. Is Zach Brown going to have a stand in Texas, right? Like, is he really the main character like that? Or, I don't know, like, are people really going to cough up top dollar to go the Zach Brown stand? I don't know, maybe. Like, to be fair to Zach Brown, he's done a sensational job with McLaren Formula 1 team, but I don't know if he's got that much pull. But we'll see, maybe he does. We're going to get a Toto Wolff stand in Austria next year. I don't know about that. Got the Toto Wolff and Helmut Marko stands right next to each other. Yeah, somewhat doubtful. But Toto's talking about 2026, as he likes to do. Again, bit of downplaying of Mercedes, saying, well, next year, I think that Ferrari are going to be really good. I think that maybe Honda are going to be really good. They're going to make a great engine for Aston Martin, and therefore, Adrian Newey's going to cook up heavily. We don't really know what the circumstance is with Honda. The rumour is that Ferrari are probably in second place when it comes to power units for next year. Red Bull powertrains have a quick one, but it's unreliable. Honda, there were concerns about them even hitting the power numbers that they were needing to, because lots of their top guys who, used to work for Honda and currently have designed the engine that Red Bull are currently using, they've gone to Red Bull powertrains, right? Horner made some serious acquisitions. So maybe Honda are not the engine manufacturers in F1 that they used to be. It's a debate. It's maybe a concern for Newey and a concern for Alonso, but we'll see. Time, frankly, will only tell. But they do have a strong technical department behind them. That is very clear indeed. But what about Ferrari? Do they have the strength in depth in their engineering team to deliver the results that Hamilton, Leclerc and Fred Vasseur and the top brass and the fans, of course, the Tifosi want to see? Well, time will tell. Now, Johnny Herbert, he's at it again. So a couple of these former F1 drivers right now are relentless. So we saw yesterday some quotes from Juan Pablo Montoya, and Johnny Herbert's done the same thing again. The funny thing is about this, that he got sacked. I literally mentioned it yesterday, how he got sacked from his role as a steward because he was doing this. And he's like, well, I guess if I got sacked for doing it, I might as well just double down. So as you guys see in the article here, Herbert told a gambling platform, so it's happened again. Basically, the drivers get told by a gambling company, hey, if you give us some quotes, we will then sell it to the media, and then they will sell it. Basically, they just have to say that you told us, with whatever company it was. As I say, Planet F1 are reporting this secondhand, so they've not mentioned specifically what that company is. But yeah, Johnny Herbert's getting paid a bit of bread. He got, this is what happened before. He got paid some money, and then they kicked him out as being a steward. So I think the same thing happened to Derek Warwick as well. Anyway, Johnny Herbert says, when Hamilton said that things are going on behind the scenes, I'm not sure what he meant. So we got Montoya's perspective. We looked at that yesterday. Now we've got Johnny Herbert's perspective, and he says maybe it's been spoken about. Maybe Carlos Sainz has been asked if he's going to come back. It's like, I mean, what are we talking about here? It's just one of these Planet F1 articles. It's kind of funny to me when it's like, oh, Hamilton replacement names, but it's like it's been named by Johnny Herbert, who has no idea what's going on. So yeah, don't know about that one. The point is that Sainz is a different type of character to Hamilton. He was at Ferrari before. They're not going to bring him back. It just wouldn't make any sense. Obviously, they're not making a change, but there was some talk from Vasseur about why things have been harder for Hamilton maybe than they expected. Now, it's also got to be said, it's not like Sainz has gone to Williams and had a killer time. Like, Albon's done a number on him this season. Yeah, Sainz has been kind of unlucky, I would argue, at times, and it's been getting somewhat better lately. But if you want to talk about Hamilton struggling to adapt to the Ferrari, it's absolutely also true that Sainz has been struggling to adapt to the Williams. So this is what Vasseur has to say. He actually said quite a lot about Hamilton's recent joining of the team and some of the other complications. Goes on to say that, of course, replacing Hamilton isn't on their radar. Lewis and I, we collectively probably underestimated the change of environment. The fact that he spent 20 years in the same team. McLaren was Mercedes, then he moved to Mercedes, an English team, same engine guys, same culture, and so on. So he spent 2026 to 2024, 18 years in this environment. Then he arrived at Ferrari, and we were stupidly expecting that he will have everything under control. So we know that recently Hamilton submitted these documents to Ferrari. The other day we heard what those documents contained. There was some details about the way the car is designed and what Hamilton would prefer to see instead, but there was also lots of talk about the operational arrangements, the way that things are done weekend to weekends, the structure of the technical department, and just other things that Hamilton is. He's not necessarily saying, hey, we need to change this, I'm fuming. When Hamilton described it the other day, he said, look, I've just listed down and given a document to say, hey, this is how things were done at Mercedes, this is how we saw success, and is that something to think about? Like, that's the way that Hamilton's trying to put this across. But on some level, given that Hamilton's going to have maybe one more chance to win a championship and get the 8th title, he does want those changes, right? Like, he can say it's a wish list all he likes, but like, Hamilton would like Ferrari to enact what he's asking for here, right? Because then that would give him all the advantages you would think that he could potentially have, especially to beat his teammate first, and then to try and think about the title. But he talks about Carlos Vasseur and says, like Sainz, it was obviously a challenge. He's not the guy, though, Hamilton, who changed team every 2 years. You've got guys on the grid. Look at Carlos. He did Toro Rosso, Renault, McLaren, us, Williams in 8 years. He changed 4 times. He's used to dealing with this. For Lewis, that's not the case. So, he says that in that sense, Sainz has an advantage on Hamilton, I suppose, in that he's more adaptable to new environments because he's done it plenty of times. I think there's probably some truth in that, but as we know, it's not like Sainz has walked into Williams and everything's been all sunshine and rainbows. Culturally speaking, there's a bigger difference between Ferrari and Mercedes than between Mercedes and McLaren, and this we underestimated. That's quite compelling, right? Because Vasseur is speaking in the context, at least to some degree, of the kind of things that Hamilton has been, I wouldn't say criticising publicly, but Hamilton said a lot about the way things are behind the scenes, and that there's lots behind the scenes that I can't talk about, but it would tell you an awful lot about why I've been struggling this year, stuff like that. We know that Ferrari is just a politics game, and, well, it's not changing anytime soon, because Vasseur says that culturally Ferrari is very different to Mercedes. That shouldn't be surprising, but I think it's kind of telling what that implies about the way that the team is operating. And it's certainly different to what you'd expect in Mercedes. It took Lewis 4 to 5 races to be a bit more in control, and I would say that from Canada, Spain, UK, Austria, he was there. And look, you can look at some of the numbers here, the deltas in terms of qualifying to Charles Leclerc. Actually, some of the biggest deltas came around Bahrain, around Jeddah, in Monaco, for example. But yeah, maybe you look at his information, you look at Spain, you look at Canada, Austria, Silverstone, those 4 Grand Prix, Hamilton was very competitive with respect to Leclerc. Spa wasn't as strong, and then of course Hungary was also pretty challenging given of course it's such a great circuit for Hamilton. He was out in Q2, he was pretty frustrated, and we know what he had to say after the Grand Prix. In Spa, he had a tough weekend, but for different reasons with the difficult qualifying. We know that they changed the new rear brakes on the car, and the race was very good. Hungary was more details. You know, okay, P1, P12 it was, but we weren't far away from having Charles P11 and Lewis P12, which isn't exactly a flex, is it really, from Vasseur, but I suppose it is what it is. I don't want to go into details, but point by point, I think we are fixing the issues. So there's obviously a few things that Hamilton's been frustrated with, and Vasseur thinks that they're getting there. It's true that Lewis sometimes a bit extreme on his guys and said, I've got a mega big issue, but is it really a mega big issue in terms of results? Yes, of course, when he's trying to win, but that's because if you're struggling with the brakes, they're a bit different compared to what you're used to in the past. You're speaking about half a tenth, and half a tenth could be the difference between getting to Q3 or not. And if you go to Q3, we fix part of the issue on the tyres, then it can be in the front row rather than being P12, which is kind of what happened to Charles Leclerc, which is difficult to understand from an external point of view, because basically what Vasseur's saying is that sometimes Hamilton says, oh, he's useless, or he basically swings and roundabouts in terms of what his opinion is. But Vasseur says that really it's not that big of a deal. For me, it's no drama. I understand the approach. I understand the philosophy. He's very, very demanding with me, with the engineers, with the mechanics, but mainly with himself. I think that everyone can accept this as long as the driver is also demanding with himself. The Hulkenberg example was a good one. He was the first one to go jogging. For the mechanics, it was okay. As long as the guy is pushing them on himself, they were keen to have someone demanding of them. So I thought that was kind of interesting from Vasseur, that as well, he literally said it. Hamilton is extremely demanding on Vasseur, on the engineers, on the mechanics, on the whole team. But the team is happy to accept that because he's also most critical of himself. And I think that makes a fair bit of sense. Vasseur also said a few other things about the way that these cars are and was asked if Hamilton just doesn't really like the ground effect. And he says, well, maybe, but probably not. Once the bouncing is there, then it can cause some issues for him. He says that, yeah, sometimes he's too harsh on the car, Hamilton. Sometimes he's too harsh on himself. It's not a disaster what happened in Hungary. It's just maybe unfortunate timing. If the summer break had come after Silverstone or after something like that anyway, maybe after Austria, then it would have been a better weekend. But I think Hamilton's probably going into the summer break after 2 difficult weekends in a row. Obviously very frustrated with how things were going. This is what he had to say on Carlos Sainz as well. So yeah, in Twitter, your thoughts and a comment. Charles Leclerc, I said at the start of the video, did also make some comments as well and says, at the end of the day, we're both trying to make Ferrari better and push them to be better. He's preparing his points, I'm preparing my points, and then we're doing big meetings where we're both inside the meetings and therefore we speak to those points and we want to improve. So of course we're aligned, and says that Hamilton's had plenty of success in the past, so obviously they're going to listen to what he has to say. But yeah, it's pretty interesting that Charles Leclerc says, yeah, okay, Hamilton's been coming up with his documentation, he's been writing some things down, but I've been doing the same thing, in the same way that Vettel would take all those notes in that notepad. We know that Leclerc has also taken on a similar habit, and maybe he's turning up to the meetings with just as many documents as Hamilton currently is, and trying to make sure that his thoughts are also very well known. So Twitter your thoughts in the comments below. Just a couple of interesting stats to close out with. These are most laps led in the season. Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, Leclerc shouldn't be too much of a surprise. But we also do have some data on what McLaren could achieve. They could become, technically, the first team in the history of Formula 1 to reach 1,000 constructors' points. They've been banging in the points lately, and they could get to 1,000. Now, the chances here are pretty slim because these are the standings. So McLaren have currently 559 points. There are 10 Grand Prix to go, and 3 of those are sprints. The maximum points you can score now is not 44 because there's no fastest lap point, it's only 43. 25 for the win, 18 for seconds, that's 43 points total. So 43 points over 10 races, that puts you to 430 points. You add that on to 559 and you get to 989, which would not be enough. But there are 3 sprints. If you were to 1-2 in all of the sprints, that's another 15 points, 8 and 7. So that's 45 points, which would put them over the line at what would it be, 1,034 points. So technically, McLaren have 34 points to play with, I think, if they want to break that record from now to the end of the season. So I don't think it's going to happen, right? As I say, one DNF for one of the cars all of a sudden changes the game, but it's not impossible. Like if McLaren just 1-2 everything and they win all the sprints and they 1-2 the sprints, then yeah, they'll break 1,000 points. The likelihood is they'll break 900, but probably not getting to the 1,000 number the way that things stands. And if somebody else wins a race, of course, things drop down rather dramatically. But I thought I'd share it for you guys anyway, because it's pretty remarkable that in a season that was expected to be maybe the most competitive season of all time in Formula 1, certainly right up there. The reality is that McLaren have a shot for a number of reasons. New point system, more races, right? There's more reasons than one why McLaren could be able to set that mark, but they could be able to set the mark on a season that we expected to be so competitive from top to bottom. In some respects it is, if you pretend the McLaren drivers don't exist. So very much enjoyed your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.